I'm Diana, 34 years, and 3 weeks ago I signed away everything I had ever built with Vincent. The five-bedroom house, both cars, the real estate company, all of it. While my lawyer pleaded with me to reconsider, while my mother-in-law smirked like she'd already anticipated my surrender, and while Brittney, the 27-year-old mistress who had crept into my life uninvited, actually took a selfie in the courtroom, her smiling, oblivious face a testament to how little she knew about the man she thought she had. Vincent Saunders, who for 8 years I had loved, trusted, and believed in, the man who had whispered promises on our honeymoon about handling money and leaving the home to me, and yet who never, not once, took responsibility for the life he was supposed to share, the life that should have included Tyler, our son, whose bright eyes and insatiable curiosity had always been mine to nurture, while Vincent treated him like a trophy or an afterthought, missing first steps, first words, school plays, and bedtime stories. And all this unfolded over the years, while I quietly noticed the cracks in the facade, the subtle perfume on his collars, the deleted browser histories, the locked offices, the unexplained late nights, the texts I didn't need to open to know what they said, the faint anxiety in his step when he thought no one was watching, the lies tucked between spreadsheets, invoices, and mortgage statements. And then, 3 years ago, by sheer accident, I opened the wrong drawer in his office while looking for Tyler's passport and found the letters, the final notices, the commercial property debts, the letters from banks I had never heard of, the evidence of a financial empire built on sand, mortgages taken out in our names, loans forged without my knowledge, balances in the hundreds of thousands, the looming specter of over $4 million in liabilities that I had been blissfully unaware of. And at that moment, sitting alone in the leather chair, surrounded by paper like a crime scene, I realized that Vincent's perfect life was nothing but smoke and mirrors. And though my hands shook, I didn't feel fear. I felt calculation, clarity, a resolve I had never known. And from that night forward, I began my clandestine education in survival, in strategy, in patience, opening a separate savings account, funneling small amounts from my part-time work, documenting every email, every statement, every scrap of evidence, while Rachel, my trusted college friend who worked at a bank, became my ally, guiding me through the murky waters of debt, fraud, and deception, watching as Vincent careened further into recklessness, buying suits he couldn't afford, dining at expensive restaurants, inviting his mistress into his world, completely unaware that his empire was teetering, that I was recording, cataloging, preparing, silently planning the moment when all of his arrogance, all of his entitlement would collide with reality. And I watched, quietly, as the mistress, Brittney Lawson, entered our social orbit, introduced at family dinners, presented as an ambitious, put-together young woman, her designer knockoffs a perfect reflection of her role as symptom of the sickness that was Vincent, while his mother, Evelyn, ever the enabler, smiled and nodded as if the universe had dealt her a perfect hand, never realizing that the hand I was holding behind my back was one she would never see coming. And then, 6 months before the final hearing, Vincent announced he wanted a divorce. Coldly, clinically, offering me Tyler as a consolation, expecting me to crumble, expecting me to beg, expecting me to plead, expecting me to accept the illusion of generosity he thought he could manufacture. And I listened, quietly, and I said nothing except that I needed time. And in those days, I refined my strategy, reviewed my files, reread Texas law regarding liability assumption clauses, structured the divorce agreement to give him exactly what he demanded, including every property and every asset, while embedding the clause that ensured he assumed all debts. And when he arrived at the courthouse that morning, Porsche in the parking lot, Rolex gleaming, his ego polished to perfection, I watched as his lawyer, Gerald Hoffman, usually unshakable, began to sense the trap. But Vincent, blinded by arrogance, did not, and as the agreement was read aloud, every asset listed, every vehicle, every LLC holding. He signed page after page with the smug confidence of a man who thought victory was guaranteed. And then, on page 47, the liability assumption clause, which he did not read, which no one could enforce against me because he had waived independent review, and the moment the pen lifted from the paper, I saw the color drain from his face, saw the realization of his folly spread like ice over a windshield, saw Gerald scrambling helplessly, saw Brittney, Evelyn, and the gallery stunned into silence, and I felt nothing but calm, because 3 years of planning had led to this instant, the perfect culmination of patience, preparation, and strategic silence. And I walked out of that courtroom carrying Tyler's hand in mine, the burden of the past lifted, the oppressive weight of his lies dissolved, knowing he would now inherit every liability, every mortgage, every loan, and watch as the empire he had built so confidently crumbled under its own weight, because even with all his charm, all his bravado, he had underestimated me. Underestimated the quiet diligence of a woman who had spent 3 years observing, calculating, and waiting for the precise moment when the scales would finally tip in her favor. And in the months following, I rebuilt our life, modest but ours, small apartment transformed into home, with Tyler's drawings on the fridge, plants on the windowsill, herbs I grew with love, returning to accounting full-time, climbing again to a position of respect and influence, Tyler thriving in school, discovering joy in soccer, reading, cartwheels, ice cream, and laughter that was uncomplicated, unburdened, real, while Vincent's world continued its collapse. The house sold at a loss, the Porsche repossessed, the LLC filed Chapter 7, debts left behind, a shell of the man who thought he had it all. And I watched it all from my quiet, sunlit kitchen, cup of tea in hand, feeling hope, feeling freedom, feeling the first real piece of my adult life. And when Vincent reached out a year later, seeking to reconnect with Tyler, I negotiated boundaries, supervised visits, therapy, employment requirements, protecting my son and my heart, understanding finally that forgiveness is not about absolution for them, but freedom for me, and that boundaries are doors, not walls, allowing only what I choose to enter. And as the stars appeared over Houston, I wrote in my journal that silence is not weakness, patience is not passivity, and the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift of all, time to prepare while they remain blind to your true power. And so I share this now with anyone watching, anyone trapped in a quiet struggle, anyone underestimated, anyone seeking freedom, to remind you that patience, planning, and self-worth are weapons in the fight for your own life, that freedom is born in the calm, and that love, even for those who hurt us, must coexist with unyielding boundaries, and that in the end, after 3 years of observation, calculation, and courage, I, Diana, mother, accountant, and survivor, walked away from the wreckage of 8 years of illusion into a life that is entirely my own, filled with laughter, growth, study, hope, and a son who knows his mother's strength. And if you ever doubted yourself, remember, silence can be strategy, patience can be power, and your worth does not depend on the recognition of those who would diminish it. For in the quiet accumulation of evidence, in the careful observation of patterns, in the preparation unseen, we can forge our own liberation. And though Vincent will always be a part of our history, the next chapter, the one Tyler and I write together, is ours, untainted by arrogance, lies, or control. And as I close this chapter and watch him grow, I understand fully the truth that every underestimated woman carries within her, that strength is often invisible until it cannot be ignored, and freedom, once claimed, tastes sweeter than any revenge, richer than any fortune, and purer than any victory the world can give. And so, with Tyler's laughter echoing through our small apartment, the smell of herbs in the windowsill, the pages of accounting texts open on the kitchen table, and a quiet city lit below, I sip my tea, I breathe, and I am free.